Well, we turn to the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line and find one of my favorites. Makes me smarter every time I talk to him, so it's a good thing that he and Kyle Allen of the Houston Texans have created a new show that's going to be talking with the best quarterbacks of the biggest matchup every single week. It's called The Room. And At The Room with Kyle and Jordan is the way that you can check things out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music. Jordan Palmer back here on The Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing well. I'm ready. It's been a long off season for me. The off season is my season, and so
I bet it is
some real football.
Okay, so who do you think will wind up with the biggest leap from year 1 to year 2, or year 2 to year 3 at the quarterback position? Jordan Palmer. I'll start very macro with you on that front. What do you got for me?
Yeah,
on that?
well, I think, and this is just from the situation. I mean, I would expect Trevor Lawrence to make some leaps and bounds. Just the stability he had in high school for 4 years, the stability he had at Clemson for 3 years, and then maybe one of the most unstable environments I've seen for a season, in a long time. For him to go to that, there's just nowhere to go but up. And so I don't even remember what his stats were. I don't know how many interceptions he threw. I kind of just scrapped that whole year. And I would expect Trevor to look more like the number one pick this year and the player that we've all expect him to be. And I think that staff being in around them, adding in a guy like Christian Kirk, a couple other pieces, I think Trevor's in a position to make a big step.
Yeah, I mean, his situation's so unique. I created a word. I don't think it's a word, but I say it. He's unevaluable. You can't evaluate him based on what last year was and looked like, thanks to Urban Meyer. And so now, year 2 for him, what do you think Doug Peterson does that he can bring to the equation that can help us evaluate Trevor Lawrence and see what he can do? What do you think?
Well, I think he's a great offensive mind, but even before that, I mean, he's just going to be in a position to have success. I mean, you know this. You've been doing this a long time. Like, all the stories we heard about what were happening last year with Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's always a small percentage of what's actually happening, right? There's all tons of stuff that no one knows about. So to go into work every single day, and the most important thing you have to do is unrelated to your own success and leading the team to victory or whatever, when like playing quarterback on the team is secondary because there's other fires to put out, I just don't know how you succeed. And so for us, I don't know how you evaluate him. So I totally agree with you. And I think this year we're going to be in a position to evaluate him. He's got stability. They've got an offense that's designed around what the pieces that they have on offense. And that sounds really obvious. Like, who doesn't do that? I don't know that they really did that last year. And so kind of co-coordinators and Urban Way in it. So like I scrap it. I like, unevaluatable.
Yeah, that's right.
But I would expect a major progress from Trevor this year.
And then another evaluation that I'm keen on, we're hearing it from Tyreek Hill. Mike McDaniel, the new coach in Miami, went on our friend Dan Le Batard's show and mentioned how the ball that Tua throws for a left-hander, even though he's really right-handed, doesn't tail. So he called it the most accurate catchable ball I've ever seen. Do you think this is just talking him up, or do you think that this is the proper evaluation of Tua Tagovailoa going into a very crucial year for him in Miami, Jordan?
I think it's a totally pointless statement to make. I mean, I saw that. I thought maybe a misquote, just why a head coach would just say that. I mean, or even a player to say that, right? I mean, you're gonna have a guy who's on the hot seat right now. But I don't care if we're talking about Joe Burrow to sit here and say, like, this is the greatest, the most catchable ball I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know how you quantify that. I just thought it was a weird statement. And that's aside from Tua. Now, for Tua, I think the main thing is injuries. I mean, he was hurt in high school, he was hurt in college, he's been hurt in the league a little bit too. So, yeah, he needs to play at a high level, and he needs to take advantage of what they have in that huddle with him, because there are some horses in that huddle. But he's got to stay healthy. And so it's going to be a combination of he's got to play the best football of his career, and he's got to be able to stay healthy in a division that's kind of a weird division right now. You got Buffalo, should run through that division and dominate. Who knows what the heck is happening in New England right now? And then with the Jets, I think I've got that's another guy I think should take a step this year, Zach Wilson. But he just missed the most important part of the offseason, which is the month leading up to the season. So what effect that has on him. But yeah, going back to Tua, just a weird statement. I've thrown it with Tua. I think he's got a great arm. He spins it really well, but it wouldn't be on the top of my list.
Yeah, as a Jet fan, I'm just looking for Zach Wilson to take a physical step, like a literal step first, before we could start talking about the figurative next step for him, and so that crucial period that you're talking about, he has missed it. And so Tyreek's other spot in Kansas City, so much conversation about the fact that Tyreek's not there and the offense will take a step back. But we're seeing all these kids like Justin Watson. We're seeing Sky Moore. We're also seeing MVS and Juju. What's your assessment of the Chiefs offense going into this year, Jordan?
Well, when they lost Tyreek or traded Tyreek, I kind of look at it through the lens of the quarterback. So as I'm talking to guys I work with and all that, we're responding and reacting to what happened. Put yourself in Pat's shoes, and I feel like there's 2, maybe 3 players in the NFL right now where they can literally score from anywhere on the field. Right? Any type of throw, all of a sudden, poof, they could take it 80. Now, there's a lot of fast guys in the league. There's a lot of great runners. But I feel like it's Tyreek Hill, it's Jamar Chase, and when healthy, I think it's Alvin Kamara. Those are the 3 guys where you go, at any given moment, this guy can score. And so that's a small number, Rich. I don't know how you get rid of those guys, right? I don't know how you say, we'll replace that with what? So that was my initial reaction. But then you start kind of watching a little bit this offseason. I kind of thought more about what Patrick is. And Pat, I think, is just a significantly more talented version of what Ben Roethlisberger was in his prime, where Ben had a different body type, different talent, different size, all that. But his ability to have guys on the outside run 14-yard curls, and then he pump fakes them, and then they just take off in any direction they want. And so guys like Santonio Holmes, guys like Hines Ward, these guys had great careers there. But it was that second reaction. It was after they run their route, then they just take off in another direction. And I feel like that's what Juju did in Pittsburgh. I think that Patrick is now like the best guy in the league to do that with. And so my initial reaction was, how are you going to replace Tyreek? And those names you just threw out, I wouldn't be surprised if it looks on paper like they didn't miss Tyreek next year and that production is made up elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a combination of those guys. But, Juju is a guy where I could see him actually have a really big year because of what I just said. It's not how fast he is or how clean a routes he runs. It's that second reaction, playmaking down the field. Pat's essentially building his game off of it right now, and he's the best in the league at doing that.
And you could see this weekend, the Chiefs stood out as a team that handled the first half of their preseason game in D.C. like it was the old school Week 3 preseason. Like they were running their offense. It looked like to me a little bit, Jordan. Right?
Yeah, they did, and I mean Pat looked,
he looked great.
Like he looked great. Yeah. But I think we got to have confidence at each position and all that stuff. But you got to have confidence as an offense. Like when that coordinator brings everybody up in the meeting room, like you got to be able to see this working really well before the season starts, right? You can have confidence in Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and these individual players, but you lost a big piece in Tyreek, and so the entire collective group and staff needs to go, all right, I see really clearly how this goes. So I was not surprised that they got significant playing time in the preseason to just as a room go ahead and take that step and go, all right, cool, yeah, we're going to move forward.
Jordan Palmer, Quarterback Summit founder and coach, and the Room co-host with Kyle Allen, and you can check it out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Who's the quarterback or offense we're not talking about that you think we should be? Jordan Palmer, what do you got for me?
Oh man, there's a couple of them, but I think there's one guy that maybe the longest offseason and that had to suffer through the longest offseason, which is Ryan Tannehill. Right now, because it's preseason and stuff, we're talking about Malik Willis, but how's Ryan Tannehill going to respond? Because they were the number one seed in the AFC last year. Derrick Henry was hurt quite a bit, came back, and then to throw 3 picks when your defense, I think they sacked Burrow, what was it, 7, 8, 9 times?
9.
Like that.
Yep.
9 times. How's Ryan Tannehill respond here? They got a young guy. We heard the comment that he made, which I think was blown out of proportion, but about it's not my job to help Malik. But I'm curious what's going to happen in Tennessee because it's still a good defense. It's still if Derrick Henry's healthy, probably the last team you want to play when it comes to running the football. And it's a small market, and it just they just slip through the cracks a lot. And so I'm really curious to see how Ryan Tannehill responds to, like I said, I think maybe the longest offseason of the year.
That is one of them, no doubt about it. And I mean, I think it's his gig, right? I mean, do you think any of the rookies have a shot to start this year? I guess Pickett does look like one who's got the best shot at a week one potential so far. I don't know.
Yeah, he's
What's your
the
sense?
only guy that's got a shot at that. I don't know the value in running with Kenny right now. And Kenny's actually a guest on our show that you've been mentioning.
Yes.
The Room. He's a guest next week. And so excited to talk with him. But I don't know what you gain out of it. It's kind of like in Atlanta. They just went ahead and named Marcus Mariota the starter because what's the point in having a QB competition if it's close at all? Now, if Trubisky was playing the worst ball of his career and Kenny's doing what he's doing right now, it makes more sense. But when you've got a veteran and a rookie and they're both playing, commiserate, you know what I mean, about the same, all that, I just err on the side of going with the older guy because you can always make that switch down the road. So I do think that Desmond has a chance to start this year in Atlanta, whether it's because they're struggling or injury, and I think the same thing with Kenny. But I'm excited to watch Trubisky play. Maybe that's an answer to what offense am I excited?
Sure.
I'm excited to watch Trubisky play in this system because just hearing Josh Allen talk about him last year when he went and got a year out of the spotlight, out of Chicago, got to go back up Josh, watch him play at that level he played at. I'm excited to watch Trubisky, how he responds too.
Jordan Palmer here on the Rich Eisen Show. In the few minutes left, let's talk about Josh Allen because he's, your odds-on favorite for MVP. Fun. And you've been there since jump, man. And I just wonder how does his ascension change the way we evaluate kids coming out of college? Because I just remember the evaluation of him and now what he's done and where he is entering this season. And you're also seeing comparisons of stats with him and Daniel Jones. I saw that last night on the Giants preseason broadcast, and they're quite similar through the first 38 starts of his career and things of that nature. I'm just wondering if Josh Allen's going to start changing potentially the way that we evaluate quarterbacks, or he's just such a unicorn. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. Forever people have said things like, you can't coach accuracy. You can't go to the NFL where it's harder and get better and be a better pro than you were in college. And he's certainly not the only one who's done that, who's become a better pro than he was college player. But I've been hearing that a lot. And when coaches say that, I say, I believe you. I bet you can't. You help somebody get more accurate as they get older. But, he's already changing it. I've actually spent some time this offseason going around to different buildings, different NFL teams, and speaking to the scouting departments on that, kind of getting brought in to consult and talk with different scouting departments about how they have actually evaluate the position. And I just think that we've got to go back further. And so when you look at a Josh Allen and you go, where did it come from? You look for the staff, you look to the people who played a role, but he's a rare one that didn't grow up in an area where he had a bunch of elite level quarterback training like so many kids have right now. And so he kind of got introduced to a lot of the stuff that other kids, when they're younger, get introduced to at a much younger age. He didn't get introduced to it till really late. But then you add in the talent and the ability and his physical traits. And so I just think that to say somebody's not accurate, or I think he was 54% in college, and then write it off, I just think that's lazy. We need to do more research. And if somebody's had a lot of training and they've had great exposure and great experience and they're still 54%, then I think you can write that person off. But what I'm challenging people to do is dive deeper and go back earlier in the story and figure out why they believe what they believe or why they don't believe what they don't believe.
Well, I guess the question is how much better can he get, do you think, Jordan? What do you think?
Well, I think when you look at the guys who've been MVPs and done it, Aaron and Tom and Peyton and these guys who've done it, it was a full season, right? It was no bad games. It was complete. And Josh's highs are as high as we've seen, with his last game of the season last year. But they stubbed their toe and lost to Pittsburgh early. I was in Tennessee for the Monday night game when kind of missed really only missed one or two throws, but then they lose by 3. That affects the seeding, and so it's a complete year. They have to start week 1 the way that they finished last year. the great teams and the best players in this league do that, and that's my expectations for Josh this year.
So what's the expectation for the room? You and Kyle Allen, he's down in Houston, right? And you're just going to meet Zoom and get a guest every week? What's the plan here? Walk me through it.
Well, yeah, so the room, we think about like 30 minutes before a quarterback meeting starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're in the NFL, you're in there. Like, what are the quarterbacks talking for that 20 or 30 minutes before the meeting starts? And a little bit of it's football. And when that part of football is really elite, like advanced conversations about football. You're talking about very interesting stuff. We talk about sports, other sports. You talk about fashion, you talk about music. So we've been talking about doing this, and I've got a lot of awesome guests lined up, essentially the biggest names in football, quarterback position, lined up for this year. And so Kyle and I, it's more like a PTI meets BFFs with Dave Portnoy. It'll live on YouTube. We'll cut things it'll be drips every single day. But we want the best quarterback from the biggest matchup that week. So Kenny Pickett, just because it's preseason, be joining us this week. Desmond Ridder was a guest last week. We'll get JT Daniels right before the Backyard Brawl. Josh Allen to kick off the season, and away we go all the way through this year. So we want to make the most fascinating conversation in football happening on our channel, and we're excited to do it and get basically the biggest names in quarterback lined up for the season.
The neat part about that sounds great, man, and I will be checking it out, that's for sure. And the neat part about Josh is it strikes me as he's got the ability to hear all the expectation and shoulder it and just still be himself. I have zero concern that the expectation level is going to consume him. I don't have a single ounce of concern about that at all.
Yeah.
Jordan,
it's weird too, Rich. I haven't, you've known my brother a long time,
yep.
and we were friends a long time, and people made a big deal about Carson. Right? I've certainly seen people in his prime and all that ask for autographs and ask for pictures and all that stuff. It's a little different in Buffalo. I mean, they people say and write things like our savior. I mean, really. So it's really important to that community in a way that I did not see in my time in the NFL. I never saw a player that important to a community. And whether it was Ocho Cinco in Cincinnati, Brandon Marshall in Chicago, Matt Forte in Chicago, I've never seen a community respond to this. So it's not just the winning expectations. It's like what he means to that community. And I just think I can name a ton, I won't, but a ton of quarterbacks that I've been around that are amazing players that I don't think could handle that. And I don't know what it is. He's just built to be able to handle it. And I agree. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be too big a deal.
At all. Normally you'd think that going into a season, certainly for a franchise and a team and a mafia that is so wanting it. I have no concerns about it. I can't wait to see him in a few Thursdays right here in Los Angeles. Let's do this more often. I'd love to do it, Jordan. You know that. So let's do it. Look for my call.
Cool. Thanks, Rich.
Take care of yourself. That's Jordan Palmer at JW Palms on Twitter. I follow him. You should as well. And check out, again, The Room with him and Kyle Allen every single week. YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music at The Room with Kyle and Jordan.